Oliver was an adventurous 8-year-old boy with a boundless sense of curiosity. He lived with his parents, John and Margaret, and his older sister, Lily, in a bustling city far removed from the serenity of nature. As a family, they cherished moments of togetherness and were always on the lookout for new adventures. This year, they decided to embark on a unique family trip, camping in a remote forest known for its breathtaking beauty, teeming wildlife, and towering ancient trees. This forest, nestled in the heart of a mountainous region, was famed for its pristine river, dense woods, and most notably, its population of bears. The drive to the forest had been long but filled with excitement. Oliver had spent most of it pressed against the car window, marveling at the changing landscape. As the urban sprawl gave way to rolling hills and dense greenery, his eyes sparkled with anticipation. His parents had promised him an unforgettable adventure, and Oliver was ready to explore every inch of the forest. For him, the idea of encountering wild animals, especially the majestic bears he had seen in books and on TV, was thrilling. When they finally arrived at the campsite, the family was greeted by a ranger named Mr. Carter. He was a seasoned outdoorsman with a grizzled beard and a calm demeanor. After exchanging pleasantries, he gave them a detailed briefing about the forest and its inhabitants. "This forest is a sanctuary," he explained, gesturing to the expanse of trees behind him. "You'll see plenty of wildlife, but remember, this is their home, especially the bears. Beautiful creatures, but unpredictable. Stick close to the camp and make sure food is stored securely. Bears have an incredible sense of smell, and the last thing you want is to attract one." John and Margaret nodded attentively, but Oliver's mind was already wandering, imagining himself as an explorer venturing into the unknown. He could barely contain his excitement as Mr. Carter continued outlining safety measures and explaining what to do in case of an encounter with a bear. "Respect their space, stay calm, and never, ever run," the ranger emphasized. With the briefing over, the family set about setting up their campsite. They chose a spot near the picturesque river that wound its way through the forest. The gentle sound of flowing water added to the tranquility of the setting. John pitched the tent while Margaret unpacked their supplies, and Lily helped Oliver gather firewood. The air was crisp and refreshing, a welcome change from the city's smog-filled streets. Oliver's enthusiasm was infectious. He darted around the campsite, examining rocks, collecting leaves, and marveling at the towering trees. His mother chuckled as she watched him. "Oliver, slow down. We're here to relax, not run a marathon," she teased. But Oliver couldn't help himself. Everything about the forest felt magical, the cool breeze rustling through the trees, the earthy scent of moss and pine, and the occasional chirp of birds overhead. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the family gathered around a crackling campfire. They roasted marshmallows, shared stories, and listened to the soothing sounds of the forest. It was a perfect evening, one that felt worlds away from their usual routine. "Tomorrow, we'll go on a short hike," John announced. "There's a trail not too far from here that leads to a small waterfall. It's supposed to be beautiful." Oliver's eyes lit up. "Can we see bears?" he asked eagerly. John smiled. "Maybe, but from a safe distance. Remember what Mr. Carter said. This is their home, and we have to respect it," Margaret added. "That's right, Oliver. We're here to enjoy the beauty of nature, but we must always be careful." That night, as the family settled into their tent, Oliver lay wide awake, his mind racing with thoughts of the adventures that awaited them. He imagined himself trekking through the forest, discovering hidden treasures, and maybe even catching a glimpse of a bear. To him, the forest was a playground, full of possibilities and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Little did Oliver know, the very thing he dreamed about, an encounter with a bear, would come true in a way he could never have imagined. It would test his courage, challenge his instincts, and lead to an extraordinary story of survival and connection. As the forest outside the tent hummed with life, Oliver drifted off to sleep, unaware of the incredible journey that lay ahead. The next morning, the sun peeked through the canopy of trees, casting golden beams across the forest floor. The air was crisp, and the chirping of birds signaled the beginning of a new day. Oliver was eager to get out and explore, but as the family gathered around the campfire to eat breakfast, he grew impatient. His sister, Lily, was too busy with her phone to pay attention to him, and his parents were absorbed in their conversation about the day's hike. Feeling a surge of excitement and curiosity, Oliver saw this as the perfect opportunity. "I'll just take a quick look around," he thought to himself, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. He knew his parents had given him strict instructions to stay close to camp, but the forest called to him. He had spent the night listening to its mysterious sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. It all felt so alive, and he wanted to be a part of it. Without making a sound, Oliver quietly slipped away from the campsite, weaving his way through the trees and into the dense woods. His footsteps were light, and he was careful not to disturb the quiet of the forest. The towering trees, with their thick trunks and sprawling branches, seemed to swallow him whole. As he ventured deeper into the forest, the air smelled rich with pine and earth, and sunlight filtered through the leaves in dappled patterns on the forest floor. Every direction he looked, he saw something new, a colorful patch of wildflowers, a squirrel darting up a tree, the flash of a deer's tail in the distance. The further Oliver went, the more enchanted he became. The forest felt like an untamed world of its own, full of hidden wonders and secrets. He imagined he was an explorer, like the adventurers he had read about in books, setting off on a grand quest. In his mind, there was nothing dangerous in this beautiful world, just opportunities to discover something amazing. But as the minutes stretched into hours, Oliver's sense of adventure began to take a more uncertain turn. The trees around him grew denser, and the familiar sounds of the campsite, the crackling fire, the laughter of his family, faded into the background, leaving only the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional bird call. For the first time, Oliver started to notice how quiet it had become. The forest was vast, and despite the sounds of wildlife, there was a heavy stillness that seemed to surround him. The towering trees now appeared even taller, their canopies blocking out much of the sunlight, making the forest floor darker and more mysterious. The world felt increasingly distant, as if he was no longer in the same place he had been just moments before. He stopped for a moment, realizing he hadn't seen any signs of his family or the camp. He scanned the area around him but saw only trees and underbrush. The trail he had followed was now vanishing behind him. His heart skipped a beat as a wave of unease swept over him. Oliver glanced around nervously, trying to remember the way he had come. He had only intended to wander a little, but now the forest seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. His surroundings, which had once seemed inviting and full of promise, now felt foreign and intimidating. The forest, which had once whispered of adventure, now whispered of something else, something that made his chest tighten with anxiety. He took a few tentative steps, but the trees and rocks seemed to be closing in on him, creating a labyrinth of trunks and branches. The path he had followed was no longer visible, and for the first time Oliver realized he was truly alone. The thrill he had felt at the beginning of his journey had vanished, replaced by a gnawing sense of fear. His eyes darted from one side to the other as he walked, hoping to spot something, anything, that would lead him back. The forest, which had once seemed so full of life, now felt unnervingly quiet. The only sounds were the occasional rustling of leaves underfoot and the distant caw of a crow. Panic began to creep into Oliver's chest. He called out, his voice breaking the silence. "Mom! Dad!" But there was no response. His heart raced, and a cold sweat formed on the back of his neck. He had strayed too far. He was lost. Oliver's mind spun as he tried to retrace his steps. He remembered the large oak tree he had passed earlier, but now it seemed as though the entire forest was filled with identical trees, their branches stretching overhead like a never-ending maze. The trail he had followed was nowhere to be found. He turned in circles, his breath quickening, and for a moment he thought he saw something familiar, a patch of wild flowers, a rock he had passed just moments ago. But when he hurried toward it, it turned out to be just another cluster of plants. The realization that he had lost all sense of direction hit him like a cold wave. His excitement had turned to fear. The thought of being alone, truly alone, in the middle of the dense forest was overwhelming. He tried to calm himself, but his legs felt shaky and his mind was clouded with worry. What if he couldn't find his way back? What if no one could find him? For the first time in his young life, Oliver understood the vastness of nature. It wasn't just a beautiful, safe place for adventure. It was unpredictable, untamed, and capable of swallowing him up whole. As the minutes stretched on, Oliver realized he had to make a choice. He could stay put and hope someone would find him, or he could try to find his own way back. Desperation clawed at his insides, but he knew he couldn't stay still. With a deep breath, Oliver forced himself to move again, but this time every step felt heavier. The isolation weighed on him, and the towering trees above seemed to grow even larger, casting deeper shadows on the forest floor. His surroundings, once so fascinating, now felt like a maze of overwhelming obstacles. The once exciting adventure was now a terrifying ordeal, and Oliver's excitement had turned into fear, a fear that grew with each step, each direction that led to nowhere. It wasn't long before Oliver stumbled through the thick undergrowth, his legs growing heavier with each step as the dense forest seemed to close in around him. The forest floor was uneven, littered with fallen branches, rocks, and thorny bushes that scratched at his legs. His mind raced, and he quickened his pace, hoping to find some sign of his family or at least the clearing where they had set up camp. But with every step, the forest grew denser, the trees towering higher, and the paths more obscure. There was no clear trail to follow, no comforting signpost to guide him back. His heart began to pound in his chest as the minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The peaceful serenity of the forest had evaporated, replaced by a growing sense of unease. The once inviting wilderness now seemed vast, isolating, and indifferent. Oliver's breath came in shallow bursts as he pushed forward, determined to find his way out. But the more he moved, the more he realized how lost he truly was. Then, as if to remind him of the dangers lurking beyond the safety of his camp, Oliver noticed something unusual. He stumbled upon a patch of ground where the dirt was disturbed, and he crouched down to take a closer look. Large, deep tracks were embedded in the soft earth, tracks that looked far too big to be from any animal he had ever seen before. They were roughly shaped, with claws clearly visible in the prints. His heart skipped a beat. He knew exactly what these tracks meant. Bears. Oliver stood up quickly, his body tensing. He scanned the surroundings, but the thick trees and underbrush obscured his view. A rush of fear washed over him, but he forced himself to take a deep breath. He had read about bears in the wilderness, how they roamed forests like this, searching for food, their massive paws leaving indents in the ground. He had heard the forest rangers warn about the possibility of encountering bears, but he never imagined he'd be this close to one. Oliver glanced up, his eyes darting to the trees around him. And that's when he saw it, a series of broken branches above his head, the bark ripped away. Something large and powerful had passed through here, moving with force, and the destruction was unmistakable. His stomach twisted as he realized how close he was to something wild and dangerous. He knew then that he couldn't ignore the signs anymore. He was no longer just an adventurer exploring a forest, he was in the heart of bear territory, and it wasn't a place for an 8-year-old boy to wander alone. His instincts screamed at him to turn around, to retrace his steps and head back in the direction he had come. But the path was becoming more and more difficult to navigate, and the fear that had begun to rise in his chest made it hard to think clearly. He had no idea how far he had gone or how to get back to the campsite. Every direction seemed like a dead end, and the unsettling realization that he might not find his way out began to creep into his mind. It was then that he heard it, a rustling in the bushes. Oliver froze, his blood running cold. The rustling was slow at first, faint, but then it grew louder, more deliberate. His pulse quickened, and his breath caught in his throat. It was coming from just behind a thick cluster of bushes a few feet away. He didn't dare move, his feet rooted to the spot as his eyes locked on the direction of the sound. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, and every muscle in his body tensed with fear. The rustling grew louder. Closer. And then, through the thick foliage, Oliver saw it. A massive bear, its fur a deep brown that blended almost seamlessly with the forest shadows, emerged from behind the bushes. It moved with an eerie calm, its enormous body making the ground beneath it seem to tremble. Its face was expressionless, its dark eyes fixed on Oliver from a distance. Oliver's breath caught in his throat, and his heart seemed to stop beating. He could feel his legs shaking, the fear paralyzing him. The bear was so close. Too close. It was huge, bigger than anything he had imagined, and it seemed to tower over him. Even though it wasn't charging, it simply watched him, its dark eyes gleaming as if it were studying him. The silence between them was thick, oppressive. Oliver felt like he was caught in a moment frozen in time. For a long, agonizing second, he couldn't move. His mind raced with questions. Was the bear just curious, or was it preparing to attack? What should he do? Should he make a sound, try to scare it away? But the words of the forest ranger echoed in his mind, if you encounter a bear, do not run. Do not make sudden movements. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body wouldn't obey. The bear's gaze seemed to paralyze him. He could see the muscles in its powerful frame ripple with every movement. The bear was slowly taking a few cautious steps closer, but still, it did not charge. Oliver remained perfectly still, his breath shallow, his heart pounding in his chest. His body felt heavy, as though it were made of stone. He remembered the bear's warning signs, the tracks, the claw marks on trees, and realized how much danger he was in. The bear could strike at any moment. He wasn't sure if the bear was just curious or if it saw him as a threat, but one thing was certain. Oliver had intruded on its territory, and he had no idea how to get out of it. The seconds stretched out like an eternity. Oliver knew he needed to do something, anything, but he couldn't think clearly. His mind was overwhelmed by the sheer size and power of the bear, and all he could do was wait, frozen, praying the bear would lose interest. After what felt like an eternity, the bear gave a low grunt. It seemed to lose interest, turning its head slightly as it sniffed the air, and then slowly began to retreat back into the thick undergrowth. Oliver's heart continued to race, but the bear's attention had shifted. It wasn't coming after him. Not yet. As the bear's massive form disappeared into the brush, Oliver felt his legs go weak, and he collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. His heart hammered in his chest, and the world around him felt blurry. He had survived the encounter, but only by sheer luck. The reality of his situation set in. He was still alone, still lost in the vast forest, and now he had narrowly escaped a deadly encounter. The fear that gripped him only deepened, and the forest, which had once seemed so full of promise and adventure, now felt like a dangerous place, one where survival was anything but guaranteed. Oliver's heart raced as the bear disappeared into the forest, but the terror that gripped him remained. His legs felt weak and unsteady, his mind clouded with the overwhelming realization of how dangerous the forest truly was. He had narrowly escaped death, but he knew the bear wasn't the only threat. The fear of being lost and alone, with no one to help him, was almost too much to bear. He couldn't stay here. He needed to get away. His eyes scanned the trees around him, searching for any sign of safety. In the distance, a large oak loomed, its massive trunk rising high into the sky, its branches spread wide like arms ready to offer shelter. Oliver's breath caught in his throat as an idea sparked in his mind. Climbing the tree would give him a better view of the area, and more importantly, it would provide him with a chance to escape the forest floor, where predators like the bear roamed. He could make his way up and wait for help. Without wasting another second, Oliver hobbled toward the oak tree, ignoring the sharp pangs of pain in his legs. He had to get up that tree. He had to get out of this nightmare. His eyes flicked nervously around the forest, afraid the bear might return at any moment. The tree was thick, its bark rough and gnarled, but Oliver was determined. He grabbed onto a low branch, feeling the texture of the bark beneath his hands, and hoisted himself up. At first, the climb was slow but steady. The branches creaked under his weight, but they held strong. Oliver's chest heaved with exertion, but he didn't care. He was almost halfway up. He could see the tops of the trees now, and for a moment, the dense forest below him felt less threatening. The view was breathtaking, offering a glimpse of the distant hills and the open sky. But then, just as his foot reached for another branch, his grip faltered. Oliver's heart skipped a beat as his hands slipped on the rough bark. The world seemed to tilt, and before he could regain his balance, he lost his footing completely. His body twisted in midair as he fell, crashing violently to the ground with a sickening thud. The air was knocked out of him, and for a moment, everything was a blur of pain and confusion. Oliver gasped for air, trying to push himself up, but the pain in his ankle was unbearable. A sharp, searing agony shot up his leg as he shifted his weight, and he cried out, clutching his injured foot. Tears sprang to his eyes as he stared down at his ankle, which was twisted at an unnatural angle. His stomach churned at the sight. He tried to stand, but the pain was so intense that he collapsed back to the ground, gasping for breath. His ankle throbbed with every beat of his heart, and a wave of nausea washed over him. The pain was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The forest around him seemed to close in as panic set in. He was alone, lost, and now severely injured. His heart pounded in his chest, and his mind raced with fear. How would he get back to the campsite now? Who would hear him if he called for help? The thought of the bear slowly creeping back into his mind made the situation even more terrifying. He tried to push himself up again, but it was futile. His ankle wouldn't hold his weight, and his limbs felt weak. A desperate, sinking feeling of helplessness gripped him. His breath quickened as he glanced around frantically. The forest seemed eerily silent now, the sound of the wind rustling through the leaves replaced by the pounding of his own heartbeat in his ears. But then he heard it again, a rustling in the bushes. Faint at first, but unmistakable. Oliver's blood ran cold as he recognized the sound. It was too familiar. The bear. The rustling grew louder, and Oliver's eyes widened in terror as he saw a shadow moving through the trees, closing in on him. It was slow, deliberate. He could see the bear's massive shape pushing through the underbrush. The bear was back. And this time, Oliver was completely helpless. Tears streamed down Oliver's face as he tried to call out, his voice breaking with fear. Help! Help! Someone, please! His voice was weak, fragile, swallowed by the vastness of the forest. His throat felt tight as he called out again, more desperately. Help! Help me! But no one came. The forest, cold and indifferent, offered no answers. His calls were swallowed by the wilderness, and the only response was the bear's slow, heavy steps as it drew nearer. Oliver's body trembled uncontrollably as the bear's massive form came into view once again. The bear was larger this time, its eyes gleaming as it moved closer, its nose twitching as it sniffed the air. Oliver's heart felt like it was going to explode from his chest. He was trapped. With no way to escape. His cries had gone unanswered. The bear was inches away. And his legs were useless. His thoughts spiraled in a haze of panic and pain. He thought about his family, his mom and dad, his sister, how they had trusted him to stay close, to be safe. And now he was here. Alone. Broken. Vulnerable. In the woods. With nothing but a bear to witness his helplessness. The bear was so close now that Oliver could hear its labored breathing, feel its presence pressing down on him like a weight. He wanted to close his eyes to escape the reality of the moment, but he couldn't. He had to stay alert. He had to find a way out. But how? The bear paused for a moment, its gaze fixed on Oliver. The boy felt like a helpless animal caught in a predator's sights. For a long time, neither moved. The silence was suffocating, and Oliver's cries had died down, replaced by shallow, panicked breaths. Then, with a deep grunt, the bear took another step forward. The time for hesitation had passed. Oliver's heart screamed in his chest. This was it. This was the moment he had feared. But before he could react, a new sound reached his ears, a faint voice calling through the trees. Was it real? His eyes darted around, his mind struggling to focus. The rustling, the crack of branches, there was someone coming. But then, the bear acted in a way that shocked Oliver. The bear's massive form loomed over him, its deep brown eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made his pulse race. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to get away from the predator before it decided to strike. But his ankle was shattered, his body weak and unable to escape. As the bear drew closer, Oliver's body trembled uncontrollably. He had heard enough stories to know that a bear was one of the most dangerous creatures in the forest. The last thing he expected was for the animal to show any sign of mercy. The bear paused just a few feet away, its nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air around Oliver. The smell of the forest mingled with the boy's fear. But instead of a sudden attack, the bear simply stood there, eyeing him carefully. Oliver's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, he was frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. The bear, an apex predator, was so close, yet it was not making any attempt to strike. Instead, it moved forward cautiously, its massive head lowering toward Oliver's face. The soft sound of its breath filled the air, and Oliver instinctively flinched, expecting to feel the sharp claws or powerful jaws of the beast. But what happened next sent a shiver through him. The bear's large, rough tongue darted out and gently licked Oliver's cheek. It was an action so unexpected, so strange, that for a split second, Oliver didn't know how to react. The wet warmth of the bear's tongue sent a jolt of shock through him, and he recoiled slightly, his heart pounding in his chest. The taste of the bear's saliva lingered on his skin, a reminder of just how close he was to this creature. Oliver's mind raced. Why wasn't the bear attacking him? This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. He had heard of bears becoming aggressive, especially when they felt threatened. Yet this bear wasn't doing any of that. Instead, it seemed almost gentle. His confusion deepened, and a flood of conflicting emotions surged through him: fear, disbelief, and a flicker of hope. Could this bear really not want to harm him? As Oliver's thoughts swirled, the bear continued its strange behavior. It didn't retreat or move away. Instead, it nudged him with its massive snout. The bear's nose pressed gently against his side, nudging him again, as if it were trying to tell him something. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't hunting him. It seemed as though the bear was urging him to move, to get up. Somehow, the sensation of the bear's soft nudge felt strangely comforting, almost like a protective gesture. Oliver, still struggling to process everything, hesitated. The pain in his ankle was unbearable, and the idea of moving seemed impossible. He didn't know what to make of the situation. He had never heard of a bear acting this way, especially one that had just been so close to attacking him. It didn't make sense. Yet the bear seemed to want something he couldn't quite understand. Its behavior was so uncharacteristic of what he had been taught to expect from wild animals. Despite his throbbing ankle and overwhelming fear, Oliver felt an odd sense of trust beginning to form. The bear's actions were not those of a predator. It was not growling. It was not showing its teeth. And it was not acting aggressively in any way. It was calm, even curious. Oliver wondered what the bear's intentions were. Why wasn't it attacking him? Why was it treating him so differently from what he had imagined? The bear, sensing Oliver's hesitation, nudged him again, this time more insistently. It didn't seem to want to leave him alone. Oliver winced in pain, but on impulse, he reached out and placed his hand on the bear's fur. The sensation was surreal. The soft, thick coat under his palm was warm and alive, and for a moment, Oliver felt an odd connection to the creature. He couldn't explain it, but somehow he sensed that the bear wasn't a threat. The bear continued to gently nudge him, its large, wet nose pressing into his side in a comforting manner. Oliver had always heard that animals could sense fear, but what he hadn't expected was for the bear to seem so intent on helping him. It was as though the bear was trying to guide him, encourage him to get up and move. Oliver's heart fluttered with a strange sense of hope. Maybe the bear wasn't there to harm him. Maybe the bear understood that he was in danger. Perhaps it even wanted to help him survive. The idea seemed impossible. No one had ever told him a story about a bear saving a human. Yet the more Oliver thought about it, the more he couldn't deny the way the bear was acting. It wasn't showing signs of aggression or hunger. It was trying to help. The more the bear nudged him, the more Oliver realized that its behavior wasn't random, it was purposeful. Despite the overwhelming pain in his ankle, Oliver tried to gather the strength to move. The bear had shown him an unexpected kindness, but his body was unwilling to cooperate. His ankle throbbed with each attempted movement, and tears threatened to spill from his eyes. He didn't want to disappoint the bear. But it was so difficult to even sit up, let alone try to stand. The bear, sensing Oliver's struggle, remained patient. It didn't push him but continued to nudge him with its snout, its breath steady and warm against the cold air. Oliver felt a surge of gratitude and, oddly enough, trust. He had never imagined he would feel such a connection with a wild animal, let alone one as large and powerful as a bear. And then, in a strange twist of fate, Oliver heard it. Footsteps. Soft at first, but growing louder. Closer. Someone was coming. The rustling of leaves and the crunch of branches underfoot signaled that help was near. His heart leapt at the sound, and for the first time since he had fallen, he felt a flicker of hope. The bear seemed to sense it too. Its head tilted, and it looked in the direction of the approaching sound. Oliver, too, turned his gaze, squinting into the forest. He could barely make out a figure. Someone was coming for him. The bear, still steady and calm, stepped back slightly, its gaze flickering between Oliver and the approaching figure. Oliver wasn't sure what the bear would do, but it seemed to sense the presence of the person coming for him. For now, the bear was waiting, watching, as if ready to retreat or stand guard. Oliver felt a deep sense of gratitude toward the bear. Despite the terrifying situation he had found himself in, the bear had shown an unexpected kindness, one he would never forget. The journey through the forest was far from easy. As Oliver limped along, the forest seemed to close in around him, its dense undergrowth and towering trees forming an almost impenetrable barrier. The air was thick with humidity, and the smell of damp earth filled his nostrils. His injured ankle slowed him down, but the bear was always a few steps ahead, moving with effortless grace. Every now and then, the bear would stop and glance back at him as though checking to ensure Oliver was still following. The terrain was rugged, making each step a struggle. The forest floor was uneven, with jagged rocks, twisted roots, and patches of thick brush that threatened to trip him up every few minutes. Oliver had to push aside clusters of ferns or duck beneath low-hanging branches. His ankle throbbed, but he gritted his teeth and kept going, one slow step at a time, using a branch as a crutch. At one point, they reached a fast-moving stream that cut through the forest. The water rushed over smooth rocks, and the current was stronger than Oliver had anticipated. He eyed the water warily, unsure how to cross with his injury. The bear, however, didn't hesitate. It padded to the edge of the stream, sniffing the air before looking back at Oliver. Then, without any apparent effort, it stepped into the water, the current barely affecting its large frame. The bear moved with confidence, its paws steady on the slippery stones. It stopped on the other side and turned to face Oliver, waiting for him to follow. As their journey through the dense forest continued, each step became harder as the hours passed. Oliver's ankle throbbed with pain, and his body felt heavy with exhaustion. The bear moved ahead with ease, its large, powerful body cutting through the brush and navigating the wilderness with an innate familiarity that Oliver could only envy. But despite the physical pain and fatigue, a strange sense of peace settled over Oliver. With the bear at his side, he felt protected, as if he wasn't entirely alone in the vastness of the wilderness. After what felt like an eternity of walking, the bear suddenly stopped and lowered its head. Oliver squinted through the thick forest and saw something ahead, sparkling water. The bear had led him to a small, clear stream, its waters flowing gently over smooth stones. The sight was a welcome relief to Oliver, who was parched and desperate for a drink. He hobbled toward the stream, moving slowly due to his injured ankle but determined to reach it. The sound of the water rushing over rocks was soothing, and as Oliver knelt beside the stream, he cupped his hands and scooped the cool water to his lips. The water was crisp and refreshing, the kind of drink only nature could provide. As he drank deeply, the weariness seemed to lift, if only for a moment. His throat, dry from hours of walking and fear, was soothed, and his mind began to clear. He sat down on a rock by the stream's edge, resting his aching leg in the cool shade of the surrounding trees. The bear remained nearby, its eyes watchful as it grazed on some nearby bushes. Its presence was reassuring, as if ensuring Oliver's safety even in the midst of his vulnerability. Oliver watched the bear for a moment, marveling at the quiet strength and confidence the creature exuded. He had never felt so connected to the wild before. His initial fear of the bear had melted away as the journey wore on, replaced by a deep sense of gratitude. In the wild, it was easy to feel like an outsider, but here, with the bear by his side, Oliver didn't feel so alone. It was as if the bear had become his protector, guiding him through the forest, ensuring he wasn't left to face the dangers of the wild by himself. As he rested by the stream, Oliver turned his attention to his injured ankle. It had swollen significantly, the skin around it bruised and tender. He winced as he gently prodded the area, trying to determine the extent of the injury. The pain was sharp, and he realized it would be impossible to continue walking without some kind of help. He had to clean it and wrap it as best as he could, hoping it would ease the discomfort and prevent infection. With trembling hands, he dipped a piece of cloth into the cool stream, trying to clean the dirt and debris from the wound. The cold water felt soothing against the heat of his skin, but the injury was still painful, and the lack of medical supplies made it difficult to properly treat. As he worked, Oliver's thoughts began to wander. He couldn't help but wonder if anyone had noticed he was missing yet. Surely his family was looking for him by now. His mom and dad had to be worried sick. He tried to push the thought aside, but it gnawed at him. They had all been so excited about this camping trip, and now here he was, alone in the woods, with only a bear for company. A strange sense of hopelessness crept over him. How long would it take for someone to find him? How long could he survive out here on his own? The forest felt endless, and Oliver was just a small, scared boy in the face of its vastness. But as he sat by the stream, with the bear keeping watch over him, Oliver tried to focus on the one thing that gave him hope: survival. He had made it this far, and he wasn't going to give up now. As the minutes stretched into hours, Oliver took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment, trying to rest his aching body. The sound of the rushing stream was comforting, and the gentle rustling of the trees above created a soothing backdrop. For a brief moment, he let his guard down and allowed himself to relax, trusting that the bear would keep him safe. But then, through the quiet of the forest, a faint sound reached Oliver's ears, a shout. At first, he wasn't sure if he had imagined it, but then he heard it again, clearer this time. It was distant but unmistakable. Someone was calling his name. Oliver. His heart raced as he scrambled to his feet, ignoring the pain in his ankle. The shout came again, louder this time, and Oliver's eyes widened with hope. It was his name, coming from somewhere beyond the trees. He strained his ears, trying to locate the source of the sound. His pulse quickened as he realized it wasn't just one voice, it was several. There were people searching for him. "Mom. Dad." Oliver called out, his voice hoarse with emotion. He wanted to scream, but his throat was dry from dehydration. The bear, sensing his excitement, raised its head and sniffed the air, its ears flicking back and forth. The animal seemed alert, its attention shifting toward the distant sound. Oliver's heart leapt in his chest as the shouts grew louder, drawing closer. He couldn't believe it, help was coming. He was going to be found. The fear that had gripped him for so long began to dissolve, replaced by a renewed sense of hope. He wasn't alone anymore. His family, his search party, they were out there looking for him. The bear seemed to sense the shift in Oliver's emotions. It moved closer to him, nudging his shoulder with its large, warm snout. Oliver glanced at the bear, his heart swelling with gratitude. The animal had been his guide, his protector, and now, just when he needed it most, it had brought him closer to safety. With a final glance at the bear, Oliver limped toward the edge of the stream, shouting as loudly as he could. "I'm here. Over here." The distant voices responded, growing louder and more distinct. "Oliver. We're coming." The sound of their voices sent a wave of relief through Oliver, and he called out again, his voice stronger this time. He knew they were close. And with the bear by his side, he felt like everything was going to be okay. The bear, its work seemingly done, gave one last curious glance at Oliver before slowly retreating into the forest, its massive form blending seamlessly with the shadows of the trees. Oliver watched the bear disappear into the wilderness, knowing that this strange, unlikely companion had just saved his life. And then, as the search party drew nearer, Oliver's hope blossomed fully. He was going to be rescued. And he owed it all to the bear that had led him to safety. Oliver's heart pounded in his chest as the voices of the search party grew louder and closer. His family. The forest rangers. They were so near, and the thought of being found filled him with relief. His eyes scanned the trees, expecting to see his parents or a ranger break through the dense foliage any second. But as the voices approached, something unexpected happened. The bear, which had been calm and protective by his side, suddenly tensed. Its large ears flicked back, and its nostrils flared as it sniffed the air. Its body stiffened, and Oliver felt the change in its demeanor immediately. It was no longer the same gentle creature that had guided him through the forest. It had become alert, wary, and protective once again. A deep, guttural growl rumbled from the bear's chest, a warning to the approaching humans. Oliver's stomach tightened in fear. He had seen how dangerous bears could be, and he knew that the bear wasn't reacting out of malice but out of instinct. It had protected him this far, and now it was trying to protect him from the people it might perceive as threats. Oliver took a cautious step forward, his injured ankle making it difficult to move quickly. He tried to calm the bear, his voice shaky but gentle as he spoke. "It's okay. They're not going to hurt me. They're here to help, I promise." The bear's eyes remained locked on the approaching sounds, its body still tense and alert. Oliver reached out a trembling hand, hoping the bear would understand him. "They're my family," he continued, his voice soft but desperate. "They're here to take me home. Please don't hurt them." For a moment, the bear simply watched him, its growl softening slightly but not dissipating entirely. Oliver could feel the immense power in the animal's body, its muscles coiled like springs beneath its fur. He sensed the bear's confusion. Perhaps it didn't understand what the voices were, or perhaps it was too protective to trust anyone else. Regardless, the bear seemed to be trying to process the situation. In the distance, the voices of the search party grew clearer. Oliver heard his father's frantic voice calling his name, and his heart leapt. He wanted nothing more than to run toward the sound, to collapse into his father's arms, and to feel the safety of his family once again. But the bear was in his path, and it wasn't letting him go anywhere. He glanced at the bear again, trying to gauge its mood. The animal hadn't become more aggressive yet, but Oliver knew he couldn't take any chances. With a deep breath, he slowly backed up a few steps, hoping to create some distance between himself and the bear. His injured ankle protested with each movement, but he didn't care. He needed to make sure the bear didn't feel cornered. Oliver's attempts to calm the bear seemed to have little effect because the bear's protective instincts had been triggered, and it wasn't about to let anyone get too close without a fight. In a matter of moments, the search party burst through the trees. The first person Oliver saw was his father, his face drawn with worry but lighting up with relief as he spotted his son. Behind him were the forest rangers, their eyes wide with astonishment at the sight of Oliver standing so close to a bear. The rescuers stopped short, frozen in place at the unexpected scene before them. No one had anticipated finding Oliver with a bear, and they didn't know how to approach. Oliver's father took a hesitant step forward, his arms outstretched in a gesture of peace. "Oliver, son, it's okay. We're here now." But the bear reacted immediately, its ears flattening against its head as it took a few protective steps forward. A low, menacing growl rumbled from its throat again, the sound deep and unnerving. Oliver's father stopped, sensing the danger and instinctively taking a step back. The forest rangers, too, stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. The bear's body was tense, its muscles taut and ready to spring into action. Oliver's heart raced as he realized the bear was seeing his rescuers as a threat. His father had stopped moving, his eyes wide in disbelief, trying to assess the situation without provoking the bear further. The rangers had their rifles in hand, but they were unsure of whether to use them. "No!" Oliver cried out suddenly, his voice trembling as he looked desperately at his father. "Dad, please. It's okay. The bear's been helping me. It's not trying to hurt me." His father stared at him, clearly confused and shocked. "What are you talking about, Oliver? What do you mean the bear's been helping you?" The bear growled louder now, standing firmly between Oliver and his father, its gaze shifting back and forth between the boy and the approaching adults. The situation was becoming increasingly tense. The bear was far from ready to back down, its natural instincts at war with the presence of unfamiliar humans. Oliver could feel the weight of the moment, the bear's massive form blocking him from the people who had come to save him. He needed to think fast. His father wasn't going to be able to get through to him without escalating things further. Oliver glanced from his father to the bear, trying to find the right words to calm the creature down. He looked at the bear, his voice soft but firm. "Please, you have to trust them. They're here to help. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be okay." The bear, still growling but no longer advancing, seemed to consider Oliver's words. The tension in its body remained, but its aggressive posture had softened slightly. Oliver dared to take a small step forward, not wanting to push the bear too far but hoping that by showing he was not a threat, it might back down. His father, still hesitant, finally spoke. "Oliver, stay back. Don't get too close. We need to get the bear away from you." "No, Dad," Oliver cried. "Don't make it angry. It's protecting me. Just give it a moment." He turned to the bear, his voice trembling but steady. "Please, you've helped me this far. I need you to trust me." The seconds dragged on as the tension in the air thickened. Oliver's father and the rangers were still unsure how to proceed, while the bear remained in front of Oliver, its gaze never leaving the group. The standoff felt like it could erupt at any moment, but Oliver was determined to make peace. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he had to trust that the bear would understand. Oliver's father, his face a mixture of relief and disbelief, stepped forward again, his eyes fixed on Oliver. His voice, though strained with worry, called out, "Oliver, it's okay now. You're safe. We're going home." But as his father took another step toward him, Oliver's heart surged with fear. His mind raced, and without thinking, he stepped forward, positioning himself between the bear and his father. His breath was shallow, his body trembling from the intensity of the moment. "Dad, please," he cried, his voice raw with emotion. "Don't hurt it. The bear's been helping me. It saved me. Please don't hurt it." His father stopped in his tracks, his eyes wide with confusion and concern. "Oliver, we don't know what it will do." "I know," Oliver interrupted, his voice cracking with desperation. "But it's not like the other bears. It's different. It helped me when I was lost, and I don't want it to be hurt." His eyes locked onto the bear, which was now watching him intently. It still stood its ground but wasn't advancing any closer. The forest rangers, who had been standing silently behind his father, shifted uncomfortably, their weapons still at the ready. Oliver could see the tension in their eyes, the uncertainty of how to proceed. But they trusted his father, who was trying his best to comprehend what had transpired in the woods. Oliver's father looked at him, his gaze softening as he processed his son's words. He finally nodded, taking a step back, signaling to the rangers to do the same. Oliver's heart thudded in his chest as he looked from his father to the bear, silently pleading for the creature to understand. The air was thick with uncertainty as the bear stood motionless, watching the human family, its eyes flickering from one face to the next. Oliver took a deep breath, feeling an unspoken bond with the bear, a connection that had been forged through their time together in the forest. He wasn't sure how long it would last, but in that moment, it was undeniable. Oliver's father, his voice softer now, said, "Okay, Oliver. We won't harm it. We'll get you back, but we need to go. Let's just make sure we don't provoke the bear any further." Oliver felt his throat tighten, a wave of relief washing over him. The words had barely left his father's mouth when the bear, with one final lingering gaze, took a slow step back. The movement was almost deliberate, as if the bear was respecting Oliver's wishes. Oliver looked up at it, his heart filled with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. For a brief moment their eyes met, human and beast, and Oliver felt as if the bear understood that it was time for their journey together to end. The bear's massive form lingered in the shadows, watching the family as they began to move. Oliver's father, still in shock, gestured for him to come forward. The rangers, now more at ease, moved cautiously toward Oliver, ready to carry him to safety. But Oliver didn't move right away. He turned one last time to the bear, his voice barely a whisper. "Thank you," he said, his words heartfelt and sincere. The bear seemed to pause as though it were acknowledging him before turning its gaze back to the woods. Oliver's father, seeing his son frozen in place, stepped forward and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Come on, Oliver. Let's get you home." With a final lingering look at the bear, Oliver allowed his father to guide him away. He felt a sense of sorrow but also gratitude in his chest, knowing he was leaving behind the creature that had kept him safe when he had been lost. But as they began to walk toward the search party's camp, Oliver noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. The bear had followed them. It was a safe distance behind, not close enough to cause concern, but close enough that Oliver could see its dark silhouette moving along the edge of the forest. The bear wasn't leaving him. It was watching over him even now, as the search party made its way back to the campsite. Oliver, his heart filled with a mixture of wonder and disbelief, turned to his father. "Dad," he whispered, "it's still following us." His father glanced back over his shoulder, his eyes wide with shock. "It is, isn't it? What is going on?" "I think it wants to make sure I'm safe," Oliver said quietly, his voice full of awe. He wasn't sure how to explain it, but he felt the weight of the bear's protective presence in his chest. "It's been with me the whole time. Protecting me." Oliver's father didn't know what to say, but he nodded slowly, his face softening. He was still processing everything his son had just told him, but he trusted Oliver's instincts. He'd seen the bond between his son and the bear firsthand. It wasn't just a wild animal. It had been something more, a protector. A guardian. The bear stayed with them for the entire journey back to the campsite, maintaining a careful distance but never straying far from the path. Oliver's heart swelled as he watched it from time to time, its massive form moving silently through the trees, always keeping an eye on him. He could feel the bear's presence behind him, a constant reassurance that he was not alone. When they finally reached the campsite, Oliver was overwhelmed with relief. His mother rushed to him, pulling him into her arms as soon as she saw him. "Oliver, thank God you're safe," she cried, tears streaming down her face. The search party surrounded them, their faces filled with concern and admiration for the boy who had managed to survive the night in the forest, guided by an unexpected protector. Oliver's father knelt beside him, checking his injured ankle and making sure he was okay. But as Oliver reunited with his family, he kept glancing back at the edge of the forest. The bear hadn't followed them into the camp, but Oliver knew it was still out there, watching from the trees. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light over the forest, Oliver turned one final time to look at the trees. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and respect for the creature that had saved him. The bear had given him more than protection. It had given him a sense of hope, a hope that even in the most dangerous of situations, help could come from the most unexpected places. And in the quiet of the forest, where shadows stretched long and deep, Oliver knew that the bond he shared with the bear would never be forgotten. The journey that had begun with fear and uncertainty had ended with something far more powerful: trust. As the campfire crackled and his family gathered around him, Oliver whispered a quiet "thank you" into the night, knowing the bear could hear it, wherever it was. And in his heart, he would always carry the memory of the bear that had protected him. The bear that had been more than just an animal. It had been a friend. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.